Okay, welcome to Rare Evo Day 2. How we all feeling? We good? Can we make some noise? I know it's 9:30 in the morning. I'm actually very surprised, not surprised, because we have some rock star panelists coming on, but it's cool to see a full house at 9:30 in the morning in Vegas. So I'm really excited to announce this next panel, but just before I do, I wanted to explain my colors of choice for this conference. Yesterday, I wore all blue. Blue is for boldness, it's for innovation, it's for creativity. It stands for everything that's happening in the space that's wonderful, and the sparkly jacket because we're in Vegas and we're rocking it. So it's so cool to see the Cardano community flourishing. I'm such a fan. You know, I was in very early on, and I love to follow what everybody is doing in this ecosystem. So it's my first Rare Evo, and it's not going to be my last. So without further ado, I'm going to announce the next panel. And you know, as the visionary Charles Hoskinson said, we are in a very interesting times now, and the next 10 years are going to be the biggest years of change in human history. And we're here to witness this in person. It's a very special time. So I will announce our next panelists. We've got Charles Hoskinson, the co-founder and CEO of Input and Output, Giorgio Zinetti, CTO of the Cardano Foundation, JJ Siler, Chief of Staff at Input Output, and we have a panel on reflection on Cardano's growth, a fireside chat with Input Output Global and the Cardano Foundation. Please give them a big round of applause.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Good morning. Hello, hello. So I have the pleasure of sitting here with Charles Hoskinson and Giorgio Zinetti of the Cardano Foundation. And we're very excited to talk about a retrospective of Cardano development and a look into the future of Cardano. So, Charles, my first question for you, can you tell us about a couple of the pivotal moments in Cardano development, a couple inflection points that you think really made it the success that it is today?
Okay, that's a question that'd take about 2 hours to answer.
We have 30 minutes.
We have 30 minutes, okay. Well, first off, everybody thought I was insane, you know, because I said, hey, how about we build a cryptocurrency and we'll write it in an obscure programming language that nobody understands except for like turbo neckbeards. And you know, also let's like do it from peer-reviewed research. So you actually have to translate research papers, and we'll do it with like no team, and we'll do it in a distributed way, you know, because it's hard mode, right? And these people have never met each other, and they're all around the world, and then just somehow, some way, it'll become like an ecosystem. So in hindsight, maybe that wasn't the best of ideas. And, you know, we actually struggled picking languages, levity aside. You know, we thought a lot about, well, could we use a hybrid language that's functional and object-oriented, like Scala or F# or Clojure? And I talked to Rich Hickey over, and I think it was Cognitech was his company. And we also talked to Martin Odersky, who created Scala. And we said, when's Scala 3 coming out? And he's like, next year. And if you guys think we're late on deadlines, like, be a friend of Martin's. And then we talked to the Elixir guys. That was Jose Valum, and so that was fun. But we just kept coming back to Haskell, and we said, you know, we'll just do it for a few years. We'll do it for the research translation, and then at some point we'll figure out a better approach. And it's 10 years later, and we found a way to just make Haskell work. We had to set up a foundation for Haskell, improve the language, make the Windows support look good. But boy, it was that was the first major challenge. Like, what is the execution approach, and then the second major challenge was the architectural approach. I was like 25, 26 at the time, so I didn't know anything about software architecture. So obviously that was fucked up and terrible. But we fixed it, right? We made it a little bit better, except for DB-Sync. So that was great. So that was hard. And then the cryptography was really hard too. And there, I knew a little bit more about crypto than software. So we did make some good early choices on foundations of cryptography. If I could do it all over again, I would have started with BLS instead of twisted Edward curves, because that's where the industry went. But overall, the story of Cardano isn't the mistakes we made, rather, how did we acknowledge them, recover through them, and grow? Like, one of the things I was most proud of was PAB being replaced by other approaches, and doing that quickly, as opposed to doggedly digging in and spending 3 years to 5 years to 10 years to kind of get all that sorted out. Probably the greatest failure was Yella and K. That's the thing I regret the most, and it's the thing that just was tantalizingly close to me. You know, you could see it on the mountaintop, and it was just like perfection. You'd say semantic space compilation. What that means is you can write in any programming language we have semantics for, and then auto-magically, just somehow, some way, the program gets translated, runs on Yella. So we had this pond, ocean, and island strategy. The pond was EVM, the island was extended UTXO and Plutus, and the ocean was, the Yella framework. And Grigori is brilliant, UIUC and these things. We had a huge team, 19, 20 people working on it, and they wrote all these incredible papers in reachability logic, and it was always, hey, we'll crack it in 6 months, we'll crack it in 6 months. And we threw tens of millions of dollars through the years, and 3-4 years of hard work, and eventually we had to kind of roll that up and move on. So that's the one I really wish I could have gotten back in some way.
That was, for those of you that really like the whiteboard video, by the way, the video that Charles is talking about, he made an amazing video called the Pond, the Ocean, and the Island. You got to look at this one. It's amazing. It really talks about a broad strategy for programming languages and how Plutus fits into the broader picture. So if you haven't seen that one, I highly recommend going to look at it. It really offers an insight into the future of how Cardano is going to work with the massive amount of web developers in the future. And as we move into midnight on the input-output side as well, we're going to try to talk to those people and make hybrid dApps and all sorts of stuff. So it's hugely important to look at that one. The island, the ocean, and the pond, right? Or what was the order?
Oh, I don't even remember.
Yeah, the
I
ocean,
just remember what they mapped to,
and
but
island,
I don't remember the ordering.
So Giorgio Zinetti, the CTO of the Cardano Foundation, brilliant guy. I got to know him a little bit. We spent some time in Zurich together. I'm curious. He's a bit newer to the ecosystem, but what inspires you? What attracted you to work in the Cardano ecosystem and to helm the Cardano Foundation?
Well, I was enjoying my retirement, and I got approached by the CF. And initially, I wanted to keep going on with my retirement, but as I looked into the technology and the community, I thought, there's really something to this Cardano project. And I really endorse what Charles said about the peer review methodology, and it's incredible how they could foresee the future and come up with such well thought through concepts and actually implement them and achieve what they've achieved. And the second thing that convinced me to join Cardano was the community, the strength of it and the maturity of it. And I'm really excited to have joined the community now in such a pivotal phase of the hard fork Chang and bringing governance on chain. I'm looking forward to it. It's an incredible time to be working with Cardano and the Cardano Foundation.
I agree. Oh, I got a lot louder. Hello. One of the nice things is that you're joining at a time where there's a huge amount of collaboration in between input-output and the Cardano Foundation. They're changing it on the fly. A huge amount of collaboration in between the Cardano Foundation and Input-Output Global. And I was hoping that we could talk a little bit and kind of have a little conversation about the success of Aiken and how that is moving forward. So can you describe the effort behind Aiken and how the Cardano Foundation imagines Aiken moving forward as well?
Yeah, absolutely. At the foundation, how we think, or how I hope we think, is let's try to do what's best for the community, and let's give it, in the case of Aiken, it's open source, everybody can contribute, and we can be a steward of this technology. And if the community wants to take it over and run with it, so be it. And we're just happy to bring in innovation ideas. And it's the same with Amaru and Pragma. We are building a Rust node, and to begin with, we put it out of the foundation. We put it in a member-based organization, and we are developing it in an open source fashion because we don't want to build things for us. We want to build things for the whole community, and I think it's working quite well.
Wonderful, and I know that we are also contributed some full-time developers to the Aiken project. And I was curious, Charles, if you can talk a little bit about how you imagine Aiken fitting into a family of languages now that are building Cardano for different applications. Obviously, there's Plinth with what was formerly called Plutus TS. Now you've got Aiken for smart contracts and various things. I'm curious if you can give an overview of this language in context.
Yeah, so I watched an interview not too long ago, and General Petraeus was talking about like the history of being in Iraq and Afghanistan and the nature of leadership. And leadership usually is about getting the big ideas right and then working with people that know a heck of a lot more about the specific subjects to fill in those details about what do we actually want to do on the ground. And so a lot of the big ideas of Cardano are best in class in the industry, like liquid non-custodial staking, the extended UTXO model, concepts like state channel through Hydra, and this adherence to formal methods. So a very rigorous development process. But then those fine details are, well, not every developer needs to write a high assurance application. Not every developer is going to know this arcane stuff. So they come from an orientation of JavaScript or Java or C++ or a standard programming language that they grew up with, wrote enterprise applications in. So the whole point of the island, the ocean, the pond was say, have something for legacy, EVM, have something for what makes us special and unique, Plutus, and then have something for all the other developers. Well, it turns out that if you cover Rust in TypeScript, then you actually cover a meaningful percentage of the language families. It's almost like speaking Spanish. You have access to a lot of sister languages.
Yeah, the Romance languages,
exactly.
yeah.
You're kind of close to them. You're adjacent. And your time to get comfortable is not too bad. So we put 2 full-time developers into the TypeScript side of the house, too, and the Aiken side. And what this does, it means you now have a web-oriented language, works right in the browser, it's really easy to use. You have a general-purpose programming language, which is very efficient and very easy to use. And then for Plutus, really focus on what makes Plutus special. It's a high-assurance language. And what type of applications would you write there? Algorithmic stablecoins, bridges, the Cardano constitutional guardrails, where the failure of these systems results in the loss of billions of dollars or the integrity of the system as a whole. So not every developer has that high bar. They're moving fast and breaking things, so they have other languages which also benefit from the incredible foundations that we built things on. So that's how we tend to think about this philosophically. It's like, did we get the big ideas right? And is there now an ecosystem of people that are really attracted and enjoy the little ideas? And can we get the resources required? So Catalyst has been a pillar in getting resources to teams and projects, but it's not quite what it needs to be. It's very bottom up, it's very chaotic, it's very beneficial for new things. It's not so good for keeping the lights on or continuity or long arc projects that look much more like a government procurement or a moonshot or something like that. So now that Voltaire is coming out, you have this magic of a top-down budget process that can augment and grow with Catalyst. And what that translates to is if we find that the community is starting to get sticky with certain infrastructure, whether that be stuff from TX Pipe or stuff from DC Spark or it be stuff from M Labs or whatever the entity happens to be, that sticky infrastructure, we can say, okay, this now has a permanent budget line item that on an annualized basis we continue to develop and continue to grow. The advantage of that approach is that people are self-selecting. People have demonstrated they know how to solve the problem. They usually come together as very small, very agile teams. They're unfettered by bureaucracy and unfettered by legacy concerns or problems of the past. And because they're looking at it with a new set of eyes, you always get the highest level of creativity. And what we've noticed in the last year in particular with Cardano has been a pivot towards that. And it's really paid huge dividends on the development experience. It's paid huge dividends on the ease of navigating the ecosystem. And ultimately, it's created a lot of very investable assets in Cardano, which is really exciting from a growth perspective.
Absolutely. And you touched on one item in particular I think is super interesting, is that obviously we see a number of different Basho efforts going on right now. For instance, I think Hydra Doom is maybe the best Basho era thing I've seen. Single example. Millions and millions of transactions already committed. Beautiful. But Voltaire is on its way as well. And now with something like 80% of the nodes printing Chang blocks now, this is very, very exciting. And I'm curious, Giorgio, if you could tell me a little bit, what are your hopes for Cardano governance moving forward, broadly speaking?
Enjoying the event? Fire up that wallet and delegate your ADA to Rare Stake Pool. For over 3 years, Rare has been committed to providing high-quality staking services. And we're now Chang Hard Fork ready. Thank you for your support.
The easy answer, I hope it's a success. I feel a mix of excitement and fear, but I think it's a healthy balance. I trust the community And I think the design of DREP and constitutional representative and stake pool operators, it feels right. I feel we have the right check and balances to make this work. And it's probably not perfect, but together as a community, we need to make it better. And I'm so excited about it, and I hope it goes well. I think it's gonna go well. Yeah.
Now, a quick follow-up question here. What challenges do you hope that the Cardano community addresses through this governance process? And I'll ask both of you that, because I think it's an interesting thing. It kind of reflects your priorities and what you think are super interesting questions that we want to try to answer as a community with this decentralized governance model.
Yeah, I think the thing that comes to mind is education and communication. So try to understand the implication of doing certain things in a certain way and communicate it transparently to everybody so that the community can take the right decisions. Different actors have different incentives, and we need to make sure that they're all aligned for the greater good of Cardano, right? And so I think there's need to be a lot of work in understanding what specific changes might mean and communicate that.
Charles, I have the same question for you as well. What challenges do you hope that we can tackle in this next iteration of decentralized governance of Cardano?
So anytime you start something, you have very primitive, chaotic, and immature institutions. You know, the United States ran into this with the Articles of Confederation, and we couldn't even get shoes for people in the winter. And Washington had to pay out of his own pocket. You know, it was horrible. But on the other hand, it created America. You know, so it takes time for institutions to mature. So the first major challenge is just building that muscle up and not having them shatter. Because when you have immature institutions, people get frustrated, and if they don't have patience or belief, the frustration translates into competition. So too much competition too early, too much fragmentation too early, nothing gets done because you have 25 factions killing each other over very trivial things at the end of the rainbow. So unity and institutional maturity is the first challenge. Second, we have to get a constitution written and passed, which is an enormous logistical effort. And there's a lot of pioneers in this room. Joel Telpner has been putting an enormous amount of effort into it, and other people on that team. And it really is the challenge of a career. Building a constitution for a nation state is like the privilege of a lifetime. Doing it for a decentralized nation state that has people in more than 100 countries is just fucking stupid. I mean,
it's a little difficult.
Yeah, it's hard. It's very
monumental
hard. It's
and I just want to shout out the Intersect team has done an extraordinary job in organizing that effort. So shout out to Intersect. If you're not an Intersect member, also, this is where this,
right.
Yeah, cheers, guys. Good job so far. It was extraordinary. We had, I want to say, nearly 100 applications, if not more, for these constitutional workshops that'll be hosted all around the world. So pay attention to social media and those channels, because if you want to participate in one of these workshops, they're open to anybody that's in that geography. So just try to find the person that's organizing one of these. There's a list of these things available, and we'll make sure we get connected at the Intersect booth over here. It's next to the IO booth. It's over there. It's with the CF and with Emergo. So make sure you understand where your constitutional convention workshop is going to be taking place, the one closest to you. You got to attend. That's how you participate.
Well, I got to finish my thoughts.
Of course.
So that CoinDesk doesn't misquote me. You know, it's exceedingly hard. You know, when you talk about 100 countries plus, you talk about people that come from different governance systems. Some people live under dictatorships. Some people live under democracies. Some people have radically different notions of human rights. And some people care a lot about things like the price, don't care at all about the philosophy. Some people care all about the philosophy, and they'll ride the price down like Slim Pickens on the bomb. I mean, they don't give a shit. You know, so there's a lot of people there, right? And so how do you get to a common ethic and ethos? And how much do you borrow from what Satoshi created versus new things that we have to be a bit more nuanced about? And this exercise of consensus building, I think, is one of the hidden superpowers and the biggest competitive advantage that Cardano has. So while it's a huge challenge, we do not live in a world right now where people compromise and get along. The paradox of hyperconnectivity, social media and the internet, is that it made people very comfortable with living in silos and fighting each other. And so that means we no longer have to negotiate, be bipartisan, compromise, multi-partisan. Instead, we can just be radicals and just throw hand grenades at each other. And there's no greater example of that than the cryptocurrency industry, where people, even though like everybody uses wallets, everybody has public key cryptography, they have consensus algorithms, we literally are like 99% the same. But it's almost like a holy war where we really hate each other and say horrible things and they go at it because the being so close paradoxically makes you so far apart. This conference right here, we have ICP right there. We have Algorand right there. You know, we have all kinds of people. Midnight is being built with some DNA from Polkadot. So one of the superpowers of Cardano is that we're solving real time the capability to bring people together who have radically different viewpoints and philosophies, different technological viewpoints, and get them to work together for a common set of problems and good. So while it's stupid from a surface level, the fact that we actually potentially could solve that problem means that we have the largest competitive advantage. And it's something that I think I'm most looking forward to, because everything else is just a matter of getting the right configuration. And if you have 3 million people working together, 1 million people got us the Apollo program, but 1.5 million gave us the Manhattan Project. 3 million people with modern technology, you can change any economic, political, or social system in the world. You can change any nation state in the world. We will eat the entire world, overcome them all, go for number one. So we just got to solve this and get it done.
Well said. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's good. Now, speaking of which, when we're talking about these 3 million people with modern tools, Giorgio, I'm curious, what technical advantages do you think are going to set us apart moving forward?
Well, I think it's a great follow-up question, and I think it's governance, because there's no other layer one blockchain where people can voice their needs and they can change things. Try to change something on Bitcoin or Ethereum, the governance there works in a slightly different way, and it's not necessarily democratic. So I think this is our biggest advantage. The second thing is that the DNA of Cardano is one of peer research, review stuff, and things tend to work from day one, unlike other competitors that are not competitors, other layer one blockchains that are building on the fly and see if things sticks to the wall. If we keep this DNA intact in the next few years, I think we can really go far.
Totally agree. Speaking of the DNA, that's a perfect segue, because one of the things, as the more we change, some things have to remain the same. And I wanted to ask Charles, thinking about the values of Cardano and where we started and what you hope we preserve as the system continues to iterate and improve over time.
Yeah, we talk about this in terms of a reference point of North Stars. You know, as long as you know North Stars, then no matter what the roadmap is, you have a way of navigating it so that you preserve the integrity of the system as a whole. So we created one with the ecosystem and the University of Edinburgh, and that was the Edinburgh Decentralization Index. I'm so tired of hearing things like sufficiently decentralized again and again and again and again and again. What the fuck does that mean? You know, so you got to measure it. And so the problem is it's really hard to measure decentralization. There's 8 different ways you can do it. So we put all 8 of them together and created an index with the University of Edinburgh so that at least we have a conversation starting point that then we can take to the regulators, whether it be through MiCA or the UK FCA or it be FINMA or it be the SEC, whoever it is, and you can have a reasonable conversation. Well, from a roadmap viewpoint, you also now have a metric. And what that metric does is it gives you the superpower of asking a question, does this roadmap increase or decrease the level of decentralization of the system? It's a foundational question. So if we have Ouroboros Laos, we claim we've solved the blockchain trilemma, huzzah. Well, what does this do to my EDI score? If you're in a governance, because a lot of people in this room are going to become DREPs or constitutional committee members, they need that power, they need that metric, because that holds scientists accountable, that holds engineers accountable. They have to justify if they're decreasing the level of decentralization of the system, why that's a good idea, okay? Because you can't always have a unicorn pony. So then the other thing that we think a lot about is also this concept of verifiable reconstructability. Satoshi gave us the blueprint, And that was this concept of homogeneity in a replicated system. So everybody has a full node, everybody has a copy of everything. That's not possible in a large-scale distributed system. Because if your system's useful, it's going to do billions of transactions every day. If your system's useful, the global state of that system will be in exabytes or yottabytes. Okay, and the only people who are going to have a full copy of that is the NSA and Google. You just got to pick which one you want to connect to. They're basically the same at this point. Okay, so what does that mean? I need to have the ability that for my use case, even though I have a light node, I can reconstruct enough history to have the same trust model and security model as if I had a full node. That's another North Star. Where and when you violate that, you stop looking like a cryptocurrency and you start looking like Amazon Web Services. You see? So there are also throughput. What the hell does transactions per second mean? You see, when we were doing the interviews yesterday at the booth, I had extended UTXO behind me. One transaction can have dozens of events or hundreds of events inside of it. So it's TPT, transactions per transaction. Then you have other blockchains say, well, you are slow because you can only do this. So we don't have a measurement of throughput. Common problem with the CPU and the GPU industry in the 90s and 2000s where they went multi-core, and when they went multi-core, you could have all this processing power, but you're only 3 gigahertz or something like
More
that.
gigahertz
right?
is better, right?
Yeah, exactly right. And we had paradoxically chips that were running at 2 gigahertz outperforming chips running at 3.5 gigahertz. And the consumer's like, you just spent 15 years telling me the only thing that matters is clock speed, and everybody's fighting over that, and now you've changed the game. So they had to create 3D Mark and other benchmarks for that. So concepts like inclusive accountability, concepts like decentralization, concepts like throughput, these are North Star metrics, and again, they're incredibly important for the government of Cardano and the institutions of Cardano, because they're navigation points, and as a DREP or Constitutional Committee member, what you're trying to do when you vote on a roadmap or a budget is balance concerns. Would you be willing to slow the system to preserve and protect the decentralization? Would you be willing to increase the level of centralization for higher throughput? If so, how much? We call that the Solana trade-off. Okay, so these things exist, and well, they're doing well with it. Does that make sense? If your constituents say the only thing that matters is token price go up, maybe that's what you think about. You see, so this is the hard part, and I wish I had more time and more foresight, because if I could go back, retrospective on the roadmap, I would have invested a little bit earlier into trying to build out those North Stars. It took us 3 years to do EDI. If we had more resources earlier, we could have done 4 or 5 of these North Stars, and we could have inculcated them into the thinking of the ecosystem. So that's okay. We're going to have to build these things together. They're cross-industry, so if they're useful, they don't just measure Cardano, they measure all blockchain systems. And then for the first time ever, we can have an apples-to-apples comparison of how does Cardano compare to Bitcoin or Solana or Ethereum or Aptos, or pick the flavor of the week that you have. I'd like that.
Well, I just want to thank Charles and Giorgio for taking the time. Thank you, everybody, for attending today. This is a fantastic chat. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to talk with all of you. And that's it. That's all the time we have today. Cheers, guys.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Rare Evo 2025 tickets are on sale now. Save big. General admission passes are discounted to $250, and VIP passes are only $800. Join us August 7th through 9th, 2025 at Caesars Palace, Las Vegas. Hurry, only 30 days left to save. Visit rareevo.io and buy your tickets now.